Well, hello, folks. Welcome to this episode of the Profit Easy One. This is a little bit more about bugging out. I just did a video several days ago about my inch bag. And as I repacked everything, and I did add more stuff. I was trying to eliminate weight, actually put in more weight. I did eliminate some things. I believe that it is better now, but this is something y'all need to consider. I need to make some changes because this is an inch bag. I'm never coming home. This is a bag to help you to survive in the wild, to survive living off the land. There's a few things you have to live. And you pretty much have to have food and water. Shelter, yes, which would include your clothes or some type of roof over your head to keep you out of the elements, depending on where you're at and what your situation is. That could vary. So you do need to have some type of shelter. But your biggest things to survive is going to be food and water. So I think what I'm going to end up doing with my bag, now I'm going to get out and use it a couple of times first. But I'm going to put in a lot more food, less clothing, and make sure all my food procurement things are good. I'll have my pellet rifle. That's real good for procuring food, and I'll show you all sometime how my pack. Oh man, I'm really happy with it. It's set up to where I can pack that rifle on there. It'll come in two parts with just a screw. Packs in there real easy on the outside. There's perfect places for it. I've already done it. Or it'll work with a full rifle or any type of a takedown rifle. So that's good for food procurement. And I've shown my fishing kit, which is in a small instant coffee jar. I've shown it a few times, but never opened it. I plan to be going camping with my grandchildren and daughter and son-in-law soon. And there's a couple lakes on my buddy's property out there. He said, "I'll go ahead and fish if you want." So maybe when I get out there, I'll break that down. But here in Florida, I'm not. You got an ocean all the way around the state, and there's lots of lakes and rivers. Now, you do have to be careful for alligators. I've had my problems with them on at least 3 occasions since I've lived in Florida. And, pretty hairy at times. We're not going to get into all that here. But, like I said, you got to have food. So you got those two things. And then you need skills, too. Like my fishing kit also has wire for making animal traps. So, the sooner you can set up traps, some peyote deadfalls, other types of traps, there's a lot. Skills is one thing you need. The more skills that you have, the less things you need to carry in order that you can live off the land. So, develop your skills, for sure. There's plenty of videos out there. There's good books. Speaking of good books, that's another thing that is on my list right now, things to get. And I have all kinds of books on herbs. And I'm going to go through them. One of them, I used to have a different one that would have been great. It helps you to identify the plants. A lot of these, they're identified, but it's just pencil drawings, which makes it really difficult to discern some of the plants from looking at those pencil drawings. So I'd like to get a good wild edibles book. See, the thing is, a wild edibles book would be the equivalent, conservatively speaking, of carrying 100 pounds of veggies in your pack. Now, you're not going to carry 100 pounds of veggies, but having the knowledge that's in a book like that can procure you veggies on a daily, semi-daily, whatever you do, it can go out there and get you food. Things like your knives can get you food if you or a hatchet. If you gotta dig in an old log to get grubs, something like my shovel, or once again digging with those things. Although I prefer not to use my knives for digging, but you can dig up and get worms, and you can use them for fishing, or you can eat them. They're pretty nutritious. It's pretty much all protein. I heard their poop isn't that good, so maybe you can get a bunch of them, go boo, scare the doo doo out of them before you cook them. Okay. I had a few other thoughts. I should have maybe taken some notes, but this has been running through my head for a few days. Food, like I said, you have to, and your water. And that's why with my thing, I have several methods of purifying water. And I want to take one other thing. I'm going to take a little tiny plastic bottle. I'll be doing that probably today in just a little bit. And I'm going to put some bleach in that. And that's, I have other methods of purifying water, and I have the potassium permanganate, which will get plenty of it, which you can use to purify water. Of course, boiling is my preferred method, so you're not having to take in chemicals. Or you could, as I did many years ago, I used to put just two to three drops of chlorine in my canteen, shake it up, let it sit for a half hour, and then drink it. And by the way, if you are doing that sort of a thing, if you get a chance where you can remove the cap from whatever container that you have put that chlorine and water in, after it's had time to sit, and some of that chlorine will dissipate into the air. So that's just a thought. But definitely, have you means of getting water, the skills and knowledge. That's probably the most important thing. I mean, you can be totally set up and not know what you're doing, and it does you no good. It's like a guy once told my brother, said, Ralph, you ain't got no common sense. And my brother said, you know what, Stuart? It's better to not have it than it is to have it, not know how to use it. So get you those skills, learn how to use them, try to put them into practice. The more you can learn now, the better off you'll be. Because once you're in that situation, you don't have to try to learn the hard way and die trying. To die of starvation. That's a terrible way to go to. So, let me see, I was thinking I had some other means of procuring food. But like I said, that just a book like that on edible plants, that's better than carrying 100 pounds of groceries in your pack of veggies and stuff, because they're going to go bad anyway. And you can't carry 100 pounds of it and have anything else. You're not going to carry it long, that's for sure. That fishing kit that I have, that's worth, who knows, hundreds of pounds of meat. You can't carry hundreds of pounds of meat in your pack. Not only that, the meat will be fresh, much better than what you get from the grocery store. And then the traps and the skills and you don't need a whole lot of things to make these traps. Those things can bring you, again, many pounds of food. Knowing how to make the right traps can actually bring you some large game. Stuff that wouldn't even go into your pack. So I'm just throwing this out there for y'all to consider. And you should, because the doo-doo will hit the fan. And I tell you the truth, another good thing to have, though, would be something for defense. Because as you'll see when I come out with this video on the things that God says about bugging out, that is something that you're most likely going to need. Now, on a little side note, a lot of people are going to bug in. And when I do that video on what God says about those days, that may help you a lot on your decisions as to what you're going to do when it comes to bugging in and bugging out. And advice from God is better than advice you're going to get from anybody. Yeah, it's better than the advice you're going to get from anybody. I don't care if it's really Big Monkey, if it's Dave, if it, any of these big guys on the internet telling you about survival. What you get in that book is even better. Uh, and I hope to get that for you real soon. And like I said, you're not going to want to miss it. I know I've been talking about it for a while, kind of promoting it. I could put it together, but it's a long one. I'd already done it once, but the audio didn't come up. And see, and I was in the mood for it that day, which made it much better. So hopefully I'll be in the mood for it soon, and I'll show you. In fact, I want to ask you all to pray for me, to help me that I get that video out and share with you something like what God would share with you if he was putting on a bug out seminar. It's going to be a lot different from the things that you hear from most people. It'll have a lot of similarities, and it'll have the whys also. A lot of people, they're making conjectures based on what they think could or might happen. And, it's not bad to do that, to consider those things. And a lot of people have some good stuff, and some have bad stuff. When I do that video on what God says about bugging out, you'll understand more. Okay, first aid is another thing you need. In fact, I got all my first aid stuff right now. Here, I'll show you. I hope to do a video on that. I laid it all out here last night. I don't know if you can see this here. But there's the contents of my first aid kit, which I plan to separate into two kits, a smaller one for my just camping bag, and then a better one, more detailed, for my inch bag. Because, that can be very important. You can get a small injury, and I've seen people get them that can actually lead to death or the loss of a limb. Although most people that I've known that were in that situation, they eventually were able to get treatment for it. But in those days, treatment may not be so readily available. So you need to have a well-prepared first aid kit for yourself and or others. Okay, the other thing is, like I said, you got to have shelter. So whatever you get, make sure you test it. Make sure that it's good. I live on a very low budget, yet I have a pretty well-prepared kit because I know that the time is coming. It's something like that can save your life. So consider those things that I say. Remember, you gotta have, and of course you gotta have air too. And that's why I have dust mask and a dual filter respirator too. Because times will be, for sure, in many places where those things will come in very handy. I may or may not have that in this area, but there's no telling what area I'll be in when that time happens. Or no telling which way the wind's going to be blowing if something happens not too far away. So, those are just things I'm considering, and I'd like you to consider them too. I do want to carry more food. I have added a lot more food since I did the video on my bag, and I have added more clothes. The clothes aren't as heavy as the food overall. And I've gotten a lot more good food. You don't want to take junk food with you. So many of these people, I see them, they got their, what they call the 72-hour bags, and some of them, I watched one a while, he had absolutely nothing but junk food in there. Dextrose candies, protein bars, a package of what they call, he did have some real food, which is 4 of these hunter sausages, look like thin hot dogs. But he said, he could stretch that out for 72 hours. Oh, yeah, he would, but he'd sure be starving and lacking in a lot of nutrition. So take things with you that'll give you proper nutrition. And that's why I even have vitamins put away in my bag, because it's not going to be that easy sometimes, maybe, to get the proper nutrition. If you look at these people who did these Survivor Series shows and stuff, pretty much all of them. Number one concern was getting food. You can fix up a shelter, but curing food is something you need to seriously consider. Uh, whether it be by primitive weapons or by modern day powder fired weapons, bows and arrows, which you can make, if you have the skills, and I've already made several, quite a few. One was relatively weak, but I didn't expect that one to be strong. The other two were enough to definitely bring down some game. You just got to have arrows. That's why I've already pre-made a whole bunch of arrow and spearheads too that are in my bag. I missed them the other night when I was going through it, so it's not in the video, but heck, I always miss a few things. They're in different parts of the bag. But, all right, that's all I want to say about that. But really need to consider that, because you're not going to be able to carry enough food. Now, you may have a bug out location where you have plenty of food, and that's all good. And, some people look at Anne Frank. Now, she didn't bug out, but she survived through the war, even though they were searching the homes and stuff all the time. You better have a good hiding place. If you're bugging in somewhere, you better have a good way to get out of there and be ready to bug out if and when you have to. And there'll be a lot more on that when I do that video on what God says about bugging out. So keep an eye out for that. If you're not subscribed to my channel, subscribe. I'll give you things that'll help you to make it through these last days. Things primarily from the Word of God, and things from my experience and knowledge. Because God says, I wish above all things, brethren, that you might prosper and be in good health, even as your soul does prosper. And that's why I have a Bible in my bag too. And speaking of that, there was the guy, Fowler was his last name. I forget his first name. He won this thing for being out there for 87 days. One of these survival shows. Got $500,000 for it. But in those 87 days, he lost 73 pounds. And he learned a lot. But one of the things that he learned, and he's very grateful for this, is that being out there and going through those tribulations that he was going through, it helped to bring him closer to God. Because really, that's one thing you're really going to need to survive. And whether you survive or not, if you got God, then whether you survive or not, it all comes to a good conclusion. If you don't have God, whether you survive or not, comes to a bad conclusion. So folks, like I say in most of my videos, read your Bible. Man, you're going to learn plenty, and I'm going to share plenty of that with you about bugging out. And if you haven't seen some of my other videos about God and about the Bible, you need to see those. Well, most of you probably do, but the majority. All right, and then pray. Hey, pray about your preps. Pray about that the Lord will lead you and guide you into what you should have. Pray that the Lord lead you to the right people. And the other thing is repent. Because I'll tell you, and I'll show you in that video about what God says. If you're out there sinning in those last days, He talks about sorcerers, thieves, and murderers primarily. And the sorcery has to do with drugs. So watch that. And like I said, you probably need some kind of defense or escape and evasion plan for enemies. Okay, I'm losing my train of thought. I'm tired. I just thought I'd get this out to you. I hope that it's beneficial to you. And that's it. I'll catch you on the next one. But like I said, if you haven't subscribed, you probably ought to subscribe and keep an eye out for when I come out to that video about what God says about bugging out. That's one you're not going to want to miss, whether you intend to bug out or not. All right, that's it for now. Hope to catch you on the next one.